Morning guys, we got an 08 4Runner in the shop today. We're going to be doing a time belt and a water pump. It's got the 4.7 liter V8. We're also going to be replacing the alternator, which is way down there underneath the power steering pump. It's not charging the battery, so while we're doing the time belt and water pump, when we go back together, we'll replace the alternator. So first I'm going to get the battery removed and put on a charger to charge it up, and then I'm going to raise it up and get the wheels off, and then we can get started doing the time belt. Now that we got it up in the air and the wheels are off, I'm going to remove the skid plate here, and then I'm going to drain the coolant so we can get the upper radiator hose off without spilling coolant everywhere. Now that we got the coolant draining, we're going to remove this cover here so we can gain access to the fan shroud. Remove this cover, the intake tube, and then just start working our way down. Now I'm going to remove this upper radiator hose, and then we're going to loosen the fan bolts down there. There's 4 nuts holding on the fan, and we'll loosen that up, and then we'll take the serpentine drive belt off. For the fan bolts, I usually just use a pry bar kind of wedged in there, and then a 12mm box end wrench, like this. If they're not super tight, you can do it that way. Otherwise, you have to get the fan holder. Now I got the fan nuts loose. I don't know if you saw that the tension over there, I relieved some of the tension off the belt to rotate the pulley around to get to the bolt that I couldn't reach that was on the bottom. And now with all these loose, I can take the belt off. The belt just kind of helps hold it when you're breaking the nuts free. Alright, so we got the belt off. Now we can remove the nuts. Leave one or two nuts on the fan when you're trying to pull it off, because sometimes it could give way and puncture the radiator. So I like to leave one nut just loosely on there and work it back and forth till the fan comes off, and then we'll pull the fan and the fan shroud out at the same time. Now that we have the fan and shroud out, I like to put a piece of cardboard in here to cover the radiator just to prevent any damage. And then we'll remove this upper radiator hose system with these two 12s. There's an O-ring back here, so we'll just kind of take this out and then you just work it back and forth. You also have to take this hose off. Work this back and forth and set that to the side, and then we can take off this cover, and then start working our way down. Alright, so we got the upper hose, radiator hose removed. I removed the hose system that's for the oil cooler. That's what's hanging down there, dripping out. So on that thermostat housing, you'll have a gasket maker seal, and then you'll have an O-ring seal. Both those will, you have to replace the O-ring and then remake a gasket maker seal when you throw them back together. And then this is the top part of the water pump. So you don't have to clean this, because if you do a water pump, you'll be replacing that piece. Now we can remove the upper covers. When you get down to removing this cover, you have to remove this grommet, and then you have to remove this clip here by going in the back side, releasing that tab. Remove this, because this connector has to go through the cover. This is for your cam sensor. I had to get a different piece of cardboard. My other one that covers the radiator wouldn't fit. That one's for Tundras and sequoias. But now I have a piece of cardboard to cover the radiator on a 4Runner. Now that we got the upper covers out, we can remove this cover here, and then we'll have to remove the power steering nuts and bolts, slide that out, remove the alternator, remove the tensioner, and then remove this fan mounting plate. We're going to go ahead and rotate this to top dead center by using the crank bolt. Rotate the engine around. Alright, when you get to this point of rotating top dead center, here's your top dead center mark for this cam and this cam, and then down at the 0 for the crank. But if you're doing a timing belt, you actually want to rotate over here to the T on both sides, and then down on the bottom there's a little white dot. You want to rotate to that white dot, and that'll help prevent the cams from kicking over when taking the belt off. Okay, now we got the tensioner and alternator and power steering pump out of the way. We have to remove the fan bracket down here. Gotta remove this. So you got your bolt here, here, down there on the bottom, and then there's a bolt that goes through the AC compressor and it comes in right here, and then there's one on the bottom, so you have to go through the fender well to get those two. And then this bracket right here, I usually just take a pry bar and just bend this up just enough to get over this lip right here, and then this piece will slide out. Okay, now we have the fan plate removed. We can remove the crank pulley by removing the 22mm bolt here. And sometimes you have to use a puller to get this off, sometimes they'll slide off. Then we can get the back cover. Then we can relieve tension on the belt, as long as you're at top dead center, and then remove the belt. Now that we got the pulley and all the covers off, we can remove the tensioner bolts, which are down here, right in the bottom. There's two 12s, so you just slowly work those back and forth, work them, and remove the tensioner, and then they'll relieve the tension and you can remove the belt. Okay, now with the belt off, we can remove the water pump, but first we need to remove this cam sensor, because when you slide the water pump off, there's a chance it could damage the wires right here. So we need to remove that. This little plastic cover can come off. And then we can remove the water pump. Sometimes when removing the water pump, it'll get hung up on this O-ring right here. So you kind of have to get something in there behind it to twist it off. So we'll replace this O-ring with the water pump. So now I'm going to go ahead and just do some cleanup on this block, clean up some of this coolant and oil, and then we'll reinstall the water pump, and then we can start going back together. Alright, got that cleaned up. I installed a new O-ring. I like to put a little bit of white grease on the O-ring just to help prevent it from rolling and making a coolant leak right there. But when you order a factory water pump, you'll get the water pump, the gasket, this O-ring, and then the O-ring that goes up here on the thermostat housing. One thing you need to make sure you remember is this harness that goes down here needs to be tucked back in here like that between these two mounting points. What a lot of people do is they leave this out here and they forget about it, and then it gets pushed out here and then ends up rubbing on the belt. And then it comes in here and we have to do a wire repair. So it's best just to put that in there where it goes. So we can compress the tensioner now. What you're going to do is, see that hole? We're going to slide this pin here through both of them. We'll put this in the vise and compress that down until they line up and then push it in. Alright, we got the tensioner compressed, and so we were ready to go back on with the belt, but we're not going to bolt the tensioner up yet. It's easier to get the belt on and then put the tensioner in. So if you have a factory belt, you'll come with the marks for the right cam, the left cam, and then at the bottom it's got the mark for the crank. And then on the side of the belt, it's got these white marks. You have the one for the timing mark, that's right here. And then these other two, here and here, I'll show you where those go. So I installed this, put this mirror down here so you can kind of see. So there's our, right there's our first timing mark where the first line will go to. And then the doubles line will go over this threaded hole right here, and then up on top right here over the keyway is where the other one will go. Alright, so I can show you the marks now. So we have our right cam right there, pointed out, left cam, pointed out, and then down here on the bottom, you can kind of see how those white lines, one's for the timing dot, one's for the threaded hole, and then up here kind of on top, goes over the keyway. Okay, so I'm going to start threading in the tensioner to get that tight. I need to also install my cam sensor, and then once I get the tensioner installed, then I can pull the pin and I can do a rotation, a full revolution, just to make sure my timing's still on. Alright, we got the belt on, our tensioner in, pulled the pin, did our one revolution. Now you can see that we're at top dead center here. Top dead center here. And down here it's kind of hard to see. But right back in this corner right here, there's a little dot and a little recess in the gear. That'd be top dead center for the crank. Okay, now I'm going to remove the bolt. I'm going to get some emery cloth, clean up some of this rust, and then I can install the tone ring, and then the cover, and then the crank pulley, and then we can start working our way back together. Okay, I got the lower cover and crank pulley installed. Now I can install the fan adapter plate that goes right through here, and then the tensioner, and then after that I'm going to go ahead and change the alternator out. Alright, I got the new alternator installed, got the tensioner installed. Now I can start installing the upper covers, bolt up the power steering pump. Almost done. I'm going to clean this gasket maker off right here and change out that O-ring so it's ready to mount back. Alright, I got the thermostat housing installed. Now I can pull up my oil cooler line and attach that up there. Install my idler pulley. Finish installing this harness stuff. Then do the fan and the belt and the fan shroud. Alright, pretty much got it all back together. Got to reinstall the battery and the tray, install this cover that goes here, and then raise it up and put the skid plate and tires back on. we got left to do is make sure it starts. Sounds good. So I just need to add the time belt sticker to show it's been done. Hopefully this video was helpful. Stay tuned for more.